Hello, Austin County. Today I'm here with Annalee Epps, a member of AgriLife and our current watershed coordinator. Welcome, Annalee. Let's get started by tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Annalee Epps. I'm an extension specialist with AgriLife Extension. I grew up in Nacogdoches County, so East Texas. I'm used to a bit more humidity and pine trees, but I am currently based in College Station. My main job is that I'm a watershed coordinator. What that means is we have this watershed project. I'm the person who brings together all the different entities and people and communities to try and work on this project together. So I'm the point of contact. I wrangle a lot of people, including myself. I send a lot of emails. And so I'm the point of contact for that. So we'll get more into what the watershed project is in a minute, but that's kind of what I do.
I was just saying, at the end of the podcast, we will have all of your information. So be ready to have emails and phone calls from people. Okay, so I am not native to this area. What exactly is a watershed?
Yeah, so it's not local just to this area. A watershed is a geographic feature. So the easiest way to think about it is picture a bathtub. So in a bathtub, if you turn the shower head on, right, there's water falling down. That's like the rain. When all of that water hits the bottom of the tub or the sides of the tub, it's going to wash all to one point, a drain. And in that case, we're seeing those are the boundaries of the watershed is the edge of the bathtub. If it falls in the bathtub, it's going to go to the drain. If it falls out of the bathtub, it's going somewhere else. When we're thinking about a watershed, that's what we're thinking about. There are drainage divides. So if rain falls on this side of the drainage divide, it's going to go down to this creek. If it falls on this side of the drainage divide, it's going to go to that creek. So a watershed is a geographic area where all the rainfall and runoff will go to one distinct point and then exit the watershed. So in this area, we have a couple different watersheds, of course. I talk mostly about Mill Creek Watershed, which we'll have a map of later, so I can talk more about that.
All right. Now I forgot to put your pretty picture up here.
Thank you.
Now, looks like you're a hands-on girl.
Yes, I am.
No, just sit in the office.
Yeah, so yesterday I was actually out there doing water quality sampling with the Texas Water Resource Institute. We were down in Mill Creek getting wet and dirty, and I had those same pants on, so...
I hear you. Okay, now this is a little bit more about what you were talking about, where everything is. What I hope I don't jump the gun here. What are our little flags?
Red dots there. So those are actually our sampling locations.
Okay,
where we go and test the water quality, and I'll link that into the conversation about pollution later. But those are specific locations where we go once a month with, like I said, the Texas Water Resource Institute. We take some devices, we take some water samples, and we actually check the quality of the creek at those locations.
Okay, now, you said that it goes down the bathtub and all that good stuff. So how does it actually move through a watershed?
Yeah, so when you think about rainfall, there's a couple different options when that raindrop hits the ground, right? Okay. Let's say that raindrop hits a rock, right? It's going to run off that rock and maybe get into some soil. That raindrop might hit that soil first and then infiltrate. So that would be where the water goes down through the soil and then stays there for a little while for the plants and animals to use, right? What also can happen is that raindrop, especially if there's lots of water, is just going to run across the surface, right? If you think about a parking lot, it's really easy to picture. When that rain falls, all of it's going to run down to the storm drain. Right. That also happens in natural settings. Like I said, especially when you get a lot of water all at once, there's going to be water that runs across the surface and then down into the creek. That's how we get most of our, especially precipitation-based water flow is from runoff. So that's how your water is going down into the creek.
Okay. Let's see. And the next thing is that, unfortunately, it's kind of a dirty word, pollution.
Yes.
And we see it everywhere. And so as far as the water that you deal with, okay, what is the pollution that we're seeing and how does the water get polluted?
Yeah. So very briefly, there are several different types of pollution, right? You can think about an oil spill. That's a type of pollution. Trash in the creek. That's a type of pollution. All of these have different kinds of sources. Maybe we have excess fertilizer runoff from a neighborhood that's over fertilizing or a pasture or something where we got a little bit of a spill of fertilizer, right? So when we're talking about Mill Creek specifically, we have a very a different kind of pollution that people might not think about very often, which is bacterial pollution. So what we're doing is when we are looking for this bacterial pollution, we're measuring E. coli in the creek, which is an indicator bacteria. It tells us there is waste from warm-blooded mammals, poop, if you will. And that is an indication that there is waste in the water. Now, some of that's totally natural, right? We have deer, we have critters, we have fish, right? There's all sorts of things that naturally contribute to that. But when we see elevated levels, that's indicating to us that there's a problem. Either there's a lot of potential options for that. It could be leaky septic systems. So it could be human waste. It could be maybe an excess of animal waste, whether that is our feral hogs contributing, right?
Feral hogs.
Or it could be livestock, or it could be even pet waste, right? Especially in our urban areas, maybe not in this area as much. But if you think about Dallas or Austin, right? In those parks that are right next to a creek, you have dog walkers, right? And they're just depositing these lovely little packages of bacteria right next to our creeks and streams. And so there's lots of potential sources for that. One way to think about pollution, which is really helpful, is there's two different types. There's point source pollution and non-point source. In Mill Creek, we're talking about non-point source, but point source pollution is actually really easy to think about. You point at it. It's like, there it is. There's a pipe that's draining into the creek. Somebody's dumping something they shouldn't. We point at it. We say, hey, we could fix that. Usually that's going to be fixed with regulation, right? If somebody has a wastewater treatment facility and they're just dumping crap right in the creek, then we can fix that with regulation, right? TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, will come in, say, hey, that's not allowed. There'll be fines. There'll be a process. The hard part is non-point source pollution. You can't really point at it. It's a lot of smaller contributions across the landscape that add up to be a problem. So in Mill Creek, what we expect and what we've kind of found out from some of our initial work and studies is that there's all these little contributions across the landscape that we have to address individually to start to make a difference, which is why it's so important to have a coordinator. We're having to work with landowners, right? The Mill Creek Watershed is mostly in privately owned lands. And so we have to work with people, right? We're not going to come in with regulation and say, hey, you need to fix this. We're going to say, hey, there's an issue and you can be our partner and we want to help. So whether that's finding you some technical resources to help address an issue, or maybe you have a leaky septic system. Most people don't want a leaky septic system. No. Maybe we can help find some funds to help replace that, because those can be really expensive. So I got totally sidetracked on kind of some of that stuff. But that's the pollution that we're dealing with in Mill Creek is bacterial pollution. That and the elevated levels of E. coli indicating probably too much waste from warm-blooded mammals.
Okay. To continue our discussion about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So like the Mill Creek actually is at the edge of our property.
Yeah.
So this is actually important to me.
Yes.
And like we have cattle.
Yeah.
So how would you know, like, okay, if you have my little section and you go down river from me, like how do you do it in sections? Like you'd say, okay, this, half mile section is this. Like, how would you know it's my cows versus my neighbor's cows?
Right. We can't determine that.
Okay.
So one of the things that you get into, especially when you're doing environmental science, is that environmental data is hugely varied and it's really hard to measure with limited resources, right? If we had infinite resources, we probably could tell whose cows it was. But if you saw that map that we had pulled up of the Mill Creek watershed, it's an over 250,000 acre watershed.
Okay, yeah.
We have 5 sampling locations. You know what?
We have 5. There you go, your red ones.
We have 5 sampling locations because we have only a certain amount of money and time.
Gotcha.
And so when we're sampling, we're not necessarily determining who put that in the creek. We're just monitoring the levels to see, has anything changed? Are we making a positive difference? Or has something changed that's big and bad, right? We need to make sure, be checking on that. We can do some amount of tracking to figure out what is the most likely source.
Okay.
So there's a project that we could do if we got the funding called bacterial source tracking, where we actually take samples of those E. coli, those indicator bacteria, and we compare them to a library of known sources. And so we could say, hey, does this bacteria look like it came from a cow? And we can kind of do that comparison. We can't say your cow versus our neighbor's cow. We can say, do we think this came from a cow, or do we think this came from a human, or maybe a raccoon or a bird?
Okay.
And so we could do that. Again, resources. The big thing on that is money. That's thousands of dollars project.
But you could at least kind of narrow it down a little bit if you knew this whole X section was, nothing but.
I'll just say it's been a while since I took micro, 30 years ago. But is there a difference between E. coli in animals and E. coli in humans?
Yeah. So if you're looking at the E. coli strains in the gut of a human, they are going to look a little different from those in a cow. I mean, the biggest difference there is ruminant versus omnivore, right? Our digestive systems are different. Down to the individual person. So I actually had a short stint of time where I was totally going to go to medical school. But if you go down to the individual human, between me and you, our gut microbiomes are going to be totally different. just based on our diets. But really, it's based on a comparison of that library. We have a known library of samples, and we say, okay, does this E. coli look like the cow or the person or maybe the feral hog? And so it's that comparison. It's not perfect.
So you can even tell between a bovine and the hog.
So yes, there is some of that comparison. Again, it's not perfect. When we look at that, there's still error bars, right? But we can look at that and see, do we think this is a human or a cow or a hog? And we can see some differences there.
Okay. So the next thing is that, okay, you've got the watershed, you've got this long area. How do I know, because we're here in Sealy, how do I know what watershed do I live in?
Yeah, so a great resource for knowing which watershed you live in is a link that I listed there for you. It's mywaterways.epa.gov. We'll get there in a minute.
That one up there.
My waterway.
There I had it. Look at there.
So even in Austin County, there's more than one watershed, right? So right now we're in the Mill Creek Watershed. You saw that on the map. But if you go just a little bit north of Belleville, that's going to be outside the Mill Creek Watershed and in a different one. So if you wanted to try to, you could look up an address. I don't have one off the top of my head, but if you look up,
I thought we could do ours.
Yeah. So if you look up your address right here, where we are today, it'll pull up exactly what watershed you're in and if there's an impairment.
Whoa.
So you are actually in specifically the Deadman Creek, Mill Creek section.
Okay.
So one thing to know about watersheds is they can be nested. So if you think about it.
Wait, they can be what?
Nested. Just
nested
just like a Russian doll.
Mm-hmm,
just like a Russian doll. So if we're thinking about the bathtub, right? We have that big bathtub, rain is falling down, it all goes down to the drain, right? Well, imagine you're holding a cup.
Okay.
Right? That's a smaller watershed. The water that falls inside the boundaries of that cup is going to go into the bottom of the cup. But when that cup overflows, it then goes into the bigger watershed.
Okay.
So for the context here, we'd say, okay, we're in specifically Deadman Creek, Mill Creek. Okay. So we have Deadman Creek. That's where we're going to drain into mostly. And then Deadman goes into Mill. And then Mill goes into Brazos, right?
Okay.
So if you wanted to kind of think about it that way, most
It's size too, because that goes over Highway 30. That's not our property.
is it somewhere else?
No, I'm laughing. It is, but I don't want people to think that dotted line's our property. I was thinking,
no.
that encompasses Highway 30. God, that's probably about, there's Highway 36 across there. It goes into Mill Island.
Yeah.
All the way up to Burley. Yeah, I mean, that's a
big old area. No, this is our little spot right there. That's a little slice of the world.
Yeah. So as you're looking at that, you can see it does list 3 water bodies. So in that bigger context, you're in the Brazos River watershed. And then as we zoom in, you're in the Mill Creek watershed. Then we zoom in again, and you're in the Deadman Creek specifically area. But you can see there's a red stop sign where it lists Mill Creek.
Yeah,
it's telling you, hey, that's impaired. So if you want to, you can even click on the little drop down here. It says Mill Creek down at the bottom. Okay. And it'll zoom in. It'll say, hey, there is an impairment. It was identified by the TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And the identified issue is bacteria and other microbes.
It's those hogs.
So
I was just going to say the hogs have been quite active around here.
Yes, they have.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yes, they've been rooting up the pastures terribly. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so they can actually, feral hogs can cause several different issues. Obviously, they deposit their own waste because they're wallowing right next to the creek, but they also tear up a bunch of important plants and our riparian area, which I could get into that if you want me to. But those important plant communities can actually help reduce bacterial impairments as well. So they are contributing bacteria and pulling up and rooting up one of our main protections against that.
Oh. Well, isn't that nice?
We can get into it if we want to, but I can talk about this all day. So
I was going to say this also we will link at the end if people want to look up.
Yes.
And get some information because, I mean, that's a lot of info. I have not looked at this. That's a lot of information there.
And while I'm the coordinator for Mill Creek, if people look it up and want to ask me questions and get connected, I'm more than happy to answer questions and get them pointed in the right direction for their watershed, even if it's not Mill Creek.
Zoom out a little more, Shelley.
Oh, let me get it over here. Oh, look, it tells you how many acres.
Yep.
33,000 acres. That's a lot. Oh, look here. Let's see. Let's make it big. There we go. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, look, there are your other waterways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically this is, go back.
Make it small again?
Yeah. Because didn't it say on there, didn't it have a place where you can see where y'all view, up top, Shelley, scroll up some more. Oh, yeah. See where it says under 9, where it says water monitoring locations? Hit that toggle. No, not there. There you go.
There it goes. Yeah.
So can we see? Oh, okay. And there's our points where they're tested.
Yes.
There are those the pink dots.
A couple of those, or at least one I see, that yellow square is a USGS sensor. So that's the United States Geological Survey. That's going to be a place where they have a monitoring station where they'll show the water levels. They use those to help predict the floods and things. So that's going to be mostly measuring our volume of water.
I bet you is that by Twin Bridges over there?
I'm not familiar specifically, but that yellow square.
If I go a little bit closer, can you see?
Yeah, because the red's the Mill Creek, right? Yeah, that's Twin Bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah, so typically if you're going to see a USGS water monitoring station, it looks kind of like a big metal refrigerator, it's pretty big. It's got an antenna on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be mostly our water volume measurements. They keep those continually running. And then those smaller pink dots, those look like they're past ones. I would have to look up specifically and see if those are some of our sampling locations. But if you wanted a map of that, that is also on the Mill Creek website if you need it.
It shows aquatic life, swimming, identified issues. If you really report.
You could really get serious and find out what's going on with your water.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so good because, water, you have to have the water for everything.
Yeah, it's important. It's really important and valuable, and not just for us, but for the wildlife and for everything in the future, too. We got to protect it now so it's available for later.
Yeah.
Click on the permitted discharges. I'm curious about that, too.
What is it?
Permitted discharges out there, the number 10.
Yeah.
Sorry, number 10. Sorry, there.
So what are that? What are your permitted discharges?
Oh, look.
I see.
Stormwater.
Acme Brick.
Okay. Yeah, so the construction will usually be a temporary construction. Doesn't look like always, but oftentimes that's going to be a concern about sediment pollution, right? So if you're doing construction, you're ripping up all the grass and you're making a big mess of the dirt. And when it rains, you're losing a lot of soil off the top. So you can actually have sediment pollution, and they get a permit for that. And they have to control that sediment when they're doing construction.
Okay, wow,
And then there is the wastewater treatment facility. So in most cases, a wastewater treatment facility will accept sewage, treat it really well to a very high standard, and then actually release the treated water into a local water body.
Okay.
And so that's what's going on there if you saw that listing.
Wow.
That's a lot of, I had to laugh.
A lot of information.
It is.
I didn't see that when we were going over everything last night. We were getting ready for this.
Yeah, we were, because you had given us so much information. We were just kind of hitting and missing.
Yeah.
I tell you what,
God, we could make a show just on this one.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so, wow. All right. So let's stay on track because we can keep going.
We'll get there.
Okay, and actually, what's funny is most of my next questions, you already answered. It was, what were the issues? Where are we doing? Okay, the big one is, all right, so we figured out that we have these issues, the bacteria and things like that. All right, how do we address the problem? What can we do to help?
Yeah, so the biggest thing really is if you care about your water body, getting involved, right? And so asking that question is already a first step. You've already gotten involved. You've already asking how you can help. That's the really most important thing because there are so many things that vie for our time, right? We've got, we got to take care of our property. We got to take care of our kids. We got to take care of our grandparents, right? There's a lot of things going on. And so if you can afford even the time to ask, hey, how can I help? That's a great first step. Next things we really want to think about is, okay, if I'm a property owner, what on my property might be a potential source of that bacterial pollution and how can I help reduce that? In some cases, that's an easy win, right? Like we're already talking about feral hogs, right? We already all know we want to get rid of the feral hogs. Great. Now you can add another reason to the list. I want to get rid of the feral hogs because they're impacting the water quality here too.
Right.
And if you're wanting any technical assistance on that, or if you're wanting financial assistance on that, there may be resources available if you connect with me or maybe your local NRCS or your extension office to help with something as simple as, I say simple, as feral hogs, right?
Right.
But then there's things like, okay, a lot of people in Austin County and in our watershed, they have septic tanks, right? Septic tanks can overflow. They can leak. How many times a year do you go out and check on your septic tank, right? It's not something we really want to think about. And in many places and cases, you might have someone hired who comes out and does take care of your septic system. But think about it. I've had a couple of people brag to me about how long it's been since they pumped their septic tank out. That's not what we want. We want to be keeping on top of that.
Not what we want to hear. No.
And so you can find out more information about that through whether it's me or there's other AgriLife Extension resources about how to make sure your septic tank isn't leaking, that it is well maintained. Thinking about that as well. If you're a property owner who has cattle, then there are some best management practices, basically things we can do to help reduce pollution. And you can learn about those again through me or through the extension office. If you want me to dive into any of these, I can. It's just because there are so many small contributions, we can have a whole workshop, right? We can have a whole workshop on how to manage your cattle in a way that helps reduce that. We can have a whole workshop on managing your crops to reduce that.
All right. Speaking of that, okay, again, we're wandering off into the weeds, but if somebody out there is listening and they're like, hey, you know what? I have this co-op of people down my street and we would love to have a presentation about, like Peter Sanfilippo Road. We get together and we say, we'd like you to come down. Mm-hmm. Will you come down or Skype in or?
Yeah. So I absolutely love to do local programs. I want to get connected with people and I want to offer that education. Everything I do to the best of my ability is free. I mean, a little lunch won't hurt, right? But I'm a government employee. So my time is your time. And if you have a group that's really interested in, hey, we all have septic systems and we don't know much about them. We want to learn more about our septic systems. I mean, it's a dirty topic, but it is important, right? Then I can make the time and arrange and come out and do a 1-hour presentation, or we could get a specialist out and we can even do a 4-hour presentation all about that particular topic. And we can come up with specific practices that you can do even on your property, kind of almost a consultation. What can we do to reduce this pollution? It's a really cool opportunity.
And you talked about like all these different things and stuff. Okay. And, we're talking about dirty things. There's that dirty word money.
Yes.
Where does the funding come from for all of these things?
Yeah. So the funding comes from, ultimately, from my position and for the work that I do, is actually coming from the EPA. So the Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level, they have a grant system, and that money then goes to the states. So in our case, Texas, in my specific case, that grant money is coming to the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, TSSWCB. Long one there.
Of course.
They do a lot of things in the state. They mostly help with kind of that agricultural and silvicultural, that's forestry management side of protecting our environmental resources. And so EPA to TSSWCB, and then our program receives that grant money and starts using it for implementation. And that looks like primarily paying for my position, right? I get paid for my job, which are good.
Yep.
And then it also pays for the programs, the specialists who come out. It can help pay for some of the implementation. So if there's a practice that we know needs to get done, we can work in some of those funds to help with cost share. So like I said, specifically with cattle, right? If you're wanting to manage your cattle to try and reduce that waste input to the creek, so let's say you have cattle, you have a pasture that borders right up to the creek, right? Where are the cattle going to want to hang out when it's hot?
Sure.
They're going to want to hang out in the creek, and that means they're depositing their waste in the creek. One of the practices that we'll recommend is not fencing, because that just gets washed away with the next flood, right?
Right.
It's a hard argument. Instead, we'll say, okay, well, what if we provide another source of water and shade? Shade structures and a tank up on a hill, right? We can help draw those cattle away from the creek and help them deposit their waste further away, which helps it get treated before it goes into the creek. And so there might be a cost share program that can help pay for a portion of that installation.
Okay.
So that grant money really is where most of our funding is coming from at this point. In some areas, so our watershed partnership is not the only one. In other areas, there's more of an involvement of corporate sponsorships, maybe.
Okay.
We actually can have businesses get involved and provide some of that money to help implement different practices. We don't have as much of that here just because, again, we're a smaller community, right? There's not as much of that big industry trying to throw money around. But even small businesses can get involved, right? If we're having a program and we want to try and get more people to come, what do? We offer food. Right?
Of course.
And what can a business do? A business can sponsor some snacks, right? That's a super easy way for them to get involved, get a little extra advertising, because I'll be putting their information out with our flyers and stuff, and also say, hey, we care about this. We're putting some money forward. We care about our community. Let's get involved.
All right. So that's the things that'd be a good way to do partnerships. Like, hey, I own a septic company.
Yeah.
Let me call you and say, hey, I'll get some snacks. You come down and give the talk and we'll all benefit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know I pulled up this picture. You talked about going places. I mean, you go, I think this one was at the Belleville.
The farmer's market.
Farmer's market. So you guys are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. So I do my best to be in Belleville and Brenham as much as I can. Like I said, I am based in College Station. But last year I got the opportunity to come out to the farmer's market. Actually, this year I will be as well. I believe it'll be March and May. I'll be out there with a booth. I'm actually hoping to bring in a little bit of a kids activity so that if we have any littles running around, we can bring them in. I usually give out some free water bottles, and I make sure everybody knows about our upcoming events. So it's a great opportunity. Again, if you want to sit and chat with me, if anybody wants to come and just talk my ear off or have their ear talked off about water quality, it's a great opportunity, especially hopefully in March and May. It won't have gotten too hot yet. We can hang out under the shade and just, you can ask me any questions you want, and that's what I'm there for.
We can hope. Okay. I know also the cleanups. That's a big thing. And I know that people don't realize how important the cleanups are.
Yeah.
One of the things that we had, change my thing here, was several years ago. Greg, how many years?
7.
About 7 years ago, we had a huge flood.
Yeah.
Huge flood. And this is video of our area. It was taken by our sheriff, Jack Brandis. And people don't realize that these cleanups that you're calling for now, this obviously was a whole lot of rain, but when you don't always have to have a whole lot of rain to cause flooding if the creeks are not properly cleaned. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
So yeah, I think there's a piece there where you're bringing two ideas together. So the cleanups that we do are mostly trying to remove waste. Specifically, we're trying to remove trash, tires, appliances, even just our smaller stuff like bottles and stuff. Just pulling stuff out of the creek to get it out of the environment, right? If we're thinking about flooding, a lot of times that's actually an effect of stuff that's going on upstream. Okay. So flooding is a really complicated issue. We're thinking the big watershed scale when we're thinking flooding, because part of it is the rainfall, right? If we have big flashy rain, that's going to cause floods. It's just part of how it works.
Right.
But if we have a kind of a erosion problem upstream, or if they're kind of degrading their stream quality just in how they're managing, if they're channelizing it, they're just trying to get water away from their area. Right. And guess where that water is going? It's going downstream faster, which is going to overflow the banks downstream. So our flooding issues are pretty complicated. They usually are due to stuff that's happening not at that location, but stuff upstream.
So I would say, so that goes with the whole, we all have to work hand in hand.
Yes.
What you do directly affects me.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's the thing. Also, that kind of leads us into, again, with the, I'm going to stop this for a minute, back here into the cleanups. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that people need to realize that, hey, it is your problem. Everybody says, oh, it's not my problem, or, oh, I can't do it, or, and when the call goes out, you're not just doing it, to visit with people. You're doing it for a cleanup, for helping.
Okay, so and I'm sorry to interrupt. So the cleanup is based basically on it's trash.
Yes, we're cleaning up trash. Yeah. So this isn't us going down and necessarily removing log jams and stuff. That's going to be us more picking up waste. And previously what we've done is we've had more of a central location, and landowners can bring their waste to us. I believe this upcoming year when we do our fall cleanup, we're going to do something a little different. We may actually go ahead and get teams of volunteers and see if we have any landowners who would like some help getting down in the creek and pulling stuff out. There would be a process there, absolutely, of getting our volunteers some paperwork and making sure any liability was removed for that landowner. But it's a great opportunity to say, I hear a lot like, hey, I bought a property, or I've been watching the creek in my backyard, and it just, stuff washes down, right? I don't want to pay to get a dumpster to get all that cleaned out. Like, what am I going to do about it, right? That's the neighbors upstream, or like the city's upstream, or somewhere else that's contributing. So what we want to do in those situations really is take the burden off the landowners. Say, hey, we know you want it to be clean, and you're not the one dumping. Right. Let's come in here with some of that funding, right? We'll get the dumpster, we'll pay for disposal. We might even get to some of those volunteers out there to help you clean up that section and take care of that problem.
Okay, so volunteers are needed and wanted.
Yes.
Like I'm not the picture of health, but, I could pick up some trash.
Yeah.
Like my dad, he not good at walking anymore, but he sure can run a tractor.
Yeah.
And so things like that, potentially could be helpful.
Yeah. And if people are interested again in getting involved, it doesn't always look like, we talk about landowners a lot because, again, lots of Mill Creek Watershed is privately owned. But even if you live in town and you just have a little house with a little lot, there are ways you can get involved, like helping with the cleanups, or you can come to some of our programs. We have maybe a rainwater harvesting program or a lawn management program, right? There are lots and lots of ways that even small homes can reduce non-point source pollution.
Okay. So that people don't realize that there's a lot you can do even from your house.
I'll say, as far as so is each cleanup, when y'all clean up, do y'all like pick a certain section of the Mill Creek to clean? I mean, it's not like we're going to have a cleanup day on the Mill Creek. I mean,
right. Mill Creek covers a lot of,
right.
Yeah.
So what we would be doing this upcoming fall is that we would have ideally a couple of landowners who are willing to let us come out, and it would be a section. We would get that group, we would go out, we'd clean up that section, pull all that stuff out and dispose of it. We can't possibly cover the entirety of Mill Creek. Point A, it's huge. Point B, again, lots of privately owned land, right? We can only partner with so many people. And there may be people who either it's land that's owned by somebody who lives out of state or something. We can't connect with them, right? So we really rely on those people who are here, who do care about, right, their community and making sure they're involved to make those connections.
And like you said, they, don't worry, because when my granddad, was the primary owner of this land, he if you weren't family, he didn't want you out it because of fear of retribution.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of that liability concern, which totally makes sense. Or even I get this occasionally, right? I'm with the government. I'm here to help, right? Okay. What does that mean? Why are you coming out here?
Yeah.
I think it's something that's really important to emphasize too with the Mill Creek Watershed Protection Plan, with the partnership. We are an entirely voluntary organization. We do not have any regulatory bite. We're not going to come out here and start reporting people. We don't even have that option, right? So we're entirely here to partner with landowners to help them solve problems, to meet them where they're at, to figure out how to solve those issues.
Okay, so that's that too. Like you said, people are squirrely about stuff, and I don't blame them. I get like that too, because you are afraid.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
So
but anyway,
so one more thing, and then
no, go ahead.
So basically, each cleanup is unique.
Yes. So at this point, we did have a method we were using. It doesn't seem like it was working all that well. So we're actually adapting this year, and we're going to start doing that more program where we go out to a specific landowner's property and clean up. So yeah, we might hit a different section each year depending on who's willing to let us out there or what property we're able to access.
Okay. I have to ask a question. Okay. 2 of them. First of all, what's the weirdest thing you've ever found?
Okay.
And second of all, have you ever found a body?
Okay, I have not personally found a human body.
Okay.
I have found plenty of cows.
Right.
That's it. Unfortunately, it will happen.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. And actually some weird situations where you just get a pile of fish carcasses. You're like, I guess somebody went fishing and just cleaned them on the bank or something, but there was a couple places where that didn't make sense. Anyways, the weirdest thing I personally have found, I think it's better to tell you about what somebody else found. So in one of our cleanups, it wasn't in this area. It was actually with another project that I have. Somebody was cleaning up behind a business, and they found a wallet with no identifying information and $100 bill in it.
nice.
Yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, cleaning up is profitable, right? It's not not our normal situation, but it does happen. But yeah, you find all sorts of strange stuff. I think it's frustrating to realize, like, there are lots of people who just see the creek as a trash can.
Yeah.
And it's really not, right? The only thing you're doing is either you're getting it out of sight, out of mind, and then it pops up in somebody else's section of the creek, and now it's their problem. And it's really an issue. So
well, and it's not terrible, but it's not fair.
Yeah.
Because you throw it in and somebody else has to deal with it. Yeah. Because I know that, like, we have trees that go across, and sometimes it's like, what is this? Stuck in the tree, and it just, But you also have a newsletter here.
yes,
That you can sign up for. I'm going to go back here. Here is our get involved, and we'll have this website again. You can sign up for the newsletter. Tells you different things. Why are you interested? And then it also has, as you pointed out, past newsletters.
Yes.
So if you want to kind of catch up on things that have already gone on,
Yes.
to have an idea of where we came from and where we're going, it'll tell you some different things. And then, like we said, here is another. These are just websites that tell you all the different things basically what you've told us, where people can
And
go by.
plus a little,
I
right?
agreed. And you said this is specifically Austin County.
Yeah. So I work with A&M AgriLife Extension. That's kind of my boss's boss, right? Which means that I work with Stacy Villarreal here in Austin County, and I work with the county extension office. So almost anytime we have a program, the Mill Creek Watershed Partnership, Stacy's also going to be involved in that. She's going to know about it. So if you need local resources, if you're like, wow, I just really need to catch up with somebody face to face about this project, you can also reach out to Stacy or go visit the Austin County Extension office and get face to face more quickly.
Okay, and it's over in Belleville.
Yes.
And this is your big overall,
Yes.
overarching one.
Mm-hmm.
And they're on Went Street in Belleville. That's where you can see it as you drive
Yes.
by. Okay, let's see. Oh, the next thing. All right. So AgriLife, watershed people, do you have any big plans for the future? I know you said you were changing some things. What are we looking at?
Yeah. So upcoming, really, we're going to try and focus more on that stakeholder involvement. So I'm going to say, what is a stakeholder, right? I didn't define that.
Okay.
Picture somebody holding a stake, right? Yeah. Unfortunately not. I don't have any stakes to hand out. We don't have that budget, but a stakeholder is pretty much anyone who has a stake in the quality of the water. So anyone who could be affected by it, which means if you live in the watershed, you're absolutely a stakeholder. If you live outside the watershed a few miles, but you go over and you fish in Mill Creek or you canoe or kayak, you're a stakeholder. You care about that water quality, right? So we want to make sure we're getting stakeholder involvement, the people who live here, the people who care, the people who are affected by it. We want to connect them with resources, connect them with the programs, and even partner with them as they start to have ideas about what can we do, how can we improve, as they bring their concerns to the table, how can we get involved? But I can't know all that unless I'm connected with the people. And so one of the things that I always struggle with, right, is I'm based in College Station. Fortunately, it's only about an hour away. I can make the drive regularly, right? But if people don't, sit down and have coffee with me, how am I going to know what the local problems are?
Right.
So even if somebody listening, it's like, well, I don't have a big property, or, I think I'm already doing a great job in this water quality management thing. Great. Talk to me anyways. I want to hear from your perspective what's going on locally so that I can use that information to do my job better.
Well, and sometimes people don't realize that they've helped you by what they say.
Yes.
You know, and it's the whole thing. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, yeah. You have any other parting words to leave everybody with?
I would just say, again, that involvement, right? If you have any questions, if you want to ask me a question about your watershed, even if it's not Mill Creek, I'm always here to help. I do assist with other programs that are statewide that do education all over the state, all about watersheds and water management. If you're like, hey, I really want to learn more about septic systems, I can connect you with somebody who can talk your ear off about septic systems, right? So just see me as a connecting point. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to help and answer those emails and those phone calls.
Okay, so that's your local people. Yes, even teachers.
Yes.
So, everybody who's watched this knows my profession was teacher. And so that, I wish I had known about this, when I was still teaching. So that would have been a great thing to have you come out.
And even, I was going to say we had an opportunity. I went with one of our other partners to a local elementary school, and we actually did a short presentation yesterday just talking about water quality and water management, introducing those ideas early on, right? So that when you get to, maybe you grew up in a family and you inherit some land. Great. I already know about watersheds and I can do this.
Exactly.
I can take care of our local resources.
And that's so good because, we only got one world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Annalee, thank you so much for being here with us. And please come back to visit.
Absolutely.
All right.
Too.
All right. That's a wrap for today. Austin County, thanks so much for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click that bell for notifications. And we'll catch you next time.